There's a three-word phrase that I love: bet on yourself. It's a risk, but if you believe in if something that you love, bet on yourself and go all in, right?
A big hello to everyone. Welcome to the Stepping Out series, a podcast all about ordinary people just like you and me who have stepped out into the extraordinary despite the odds. My name is Anna Gray, and my sincere hope is that as you listen today or watch, that you'll be both inspired and equipped to step out into the God calling for your life. Can you believe that it is 2022? The last time I made a podcast was 2020. I apologize. I took a 2-year hiatus, but a lot has happened since then. I got married to the incredible Holly Sapra, was about to call her by her maiden name. I moved to the Great White North from San Francisco, moved to Toronto, Canada, and the big news and a big reason why I stopped podcasting was I finally launched my coaching business, which is all about, guess what it is, inspiring and equipping you to step out into your God calling. But we'll chat more about that at the end of this podcast. Today, we get to hear from Sean Daniels, and he is an incredibly inspiring person. Why? Because he's a normal guy who kept on stepping out, who kept on knocking on doors, and God has just blessed him as he's been faithful with what's in his hand. So let's do this. Let's go over to the podcast. Sean, really good to have you join us for the podcast. Man, when I thought about actually inviting you onto this podcast, I think it's like, bro, you're genuinely, like, you're one of the most inspirational guys I know. And I think I'm actually really pumped for people to hear your story, because I think your story just represents everything that this podcast is about, which is just normal, everyday people who just gave a go. And I mean, you're probably much more special than I am and much more extraordinary than I am. But I know for myself, I'm a normal dude who just stepped out. Mm-hmm. And I know that's a lot of your story. So, bro, really good to have you here.
Appreciate it. Appreciate you having me, man.
Yeah. Dude, let's jump into it. Why don't you go ahead and tell the people listening today like a bit of your story. So for the people watching, let me just give you a bit backstory. So Sean, and I'm not going to give too much away because I want to hear it from you, but this guy just starts off showing up at basketball games with a camera every time he can get into a game. He shows up, keeps showing up, and lo and behold, his life is taking him towards a certain trajectory, and he just finds himself being able to do photography at much higher levels and even up to the NBA. And I think that's just such a cool story of an ordinary guy doing that. So yeah, dude, tell the people about yourself. Like, who are you? What's your story been like?
Yeah, so I'm a bit of a talker, so if I keep going on, just feel free to cut me off. But originally me, I mean, I'm from New York. I'm currently based out in Dallas, Texas. Finished school over here. About me, I'm of Indian descent, so my story is kind of a little bit interesting because of that. I went to school for kinesiology, liked it, just toward my last year, I was kind of iffy about it. I picked up a camera my last year, and I originally wanted to do YouTube, and I realized that was not for me. My life just isn't interesting. I don't have stuff to do every day and go cool places. I just don't care for a lot of it. So yeah, I was like, well, I played basketball in my life. Why not take pictures of these guys? I know what they like. I know what they want. So yeah, I picked up a camera, started going to high school games, DM'd everybody that I could. I want to say that was 3 years ago.
2019?
Yeah, so it might have, yeah, I believe it was 2019. Yeah, so picked up a camera. I started DMing a bunch of high school kids in the area, like, hey, can I get your basketball schedule? Started going to games, and then it kind of worked out for me because now we're in the age of social media and everyone wants to post like whatever they can, especially like young high school kids. So I kind of picked up traction from that pretty quick. Guys were asking me to come out to games, stuff like that. We had about I'm not sure if a lot of people on this are familiar with it, but we had about probably 3 or 4 McDonald's All-Americans from Texas. So it was like the top 24 kids in the nation. They come out to play one big game. So they were in Texas, and I got in contact with them. I was doing their games. So yeah, from there it kind of just took off. I mean, there's a lot of other steps in the way, but yeah, I ended up landing an internship with Slam. Currently do some stuff with them. Kind of have a couple other jobs, but I mean, we'll probably get to that. So yeah, I mean, that's kind of how I started, and that's where I'm at right now.
Yeah, that's awesome. And so what are some of the things that you get to do right now? Like, okay, give me this. Give me this. What's like one of the highlights of that you've had in your journey so far?
Um, so it's for my journey, it's a little bit, it's really weird. I kind of have a bunch of different jobs right now. Currently, I'm with Slam, so I do social media management for them or social media coordinator. So I'm basically live tweeting whenever there's NBA games. I'm the one that's posting on Instagram or Twitter most of the time. So there's a little bit of that. There's obviously other people that do that as well, but I'm doing that. I'm with the old Mamba Sports Academy, formerly known as Sports Academy, or currently known as Sports Academy. So they have a location here and in California. So I'm at the one here, just doing a lot of content creation. Um, and so yeah, I mean, with both of those, I kind of get to mainly more with Sports Academy. I get to more work with athletes, a lot of NBA G League guys. When guys are in the off season, NFL, they'll come over here. We're currently in NFL pre-draft stages, so we got guys from Alabama, Georgia, all these big name schools that come out and train with us. So yeah, it's good. And then I do a lot of freelance stuff as well. Just I'll camp out at hotels and basically be paparazzi for NBA players when they come out and just take pictures of their outfits. So yeah, I've gotten to meet a lot of people from a lot of various jobs. I wouldn't just consider it one, but highlight of it probably most recently I've had some big guys kind of post my stuff. Um, Kevin Durant probably being the biggest. So yeah, I mean that's exciting. He's one of my favorite players. So.
Yeah, that's awesome. Tell us about tell us because the thing is, right? I think what would be really helpful for people to hear is I think especially the early stages are some of the most like, like everyone gets in their own head, right? Like, man, what are
hmm
people gonna think if I do this? Like, man, am I the right person for this? Like, how the heck am I supposed to make this happen? Like, tell me
hmm
about some of those early moments where it was kind of like, because the last time I spoke to you, you were kind of at more of like a tipping point where it just started gaining some momentum. So tell us
hmm
about those early days.
Yeah. I mean, early days for me it was pretty tough. With when you have Indian parents and you tell them, you're not going to go to PT school and you're not applying and you're kind of just going to do your own stuff, they're kind of like, I don't think so. You're going to PT school. So a lot of it was at first, a lot of it was a lot of disbelief. I didn't really feel like anybody believed in me and what
Mm,
I was going to do and what I wanted to do. My biggest thing was at the time and still, I love doing it and I just liked it. Like I liked connecting with people. I like connecting through photography, through art, through having my own style. So yeah, I mean, my last semester of college or last year, I remember telling everybody I was like, I'm dropping out. Like I can't do this anymore. I had one class that I failed. Had to retake it again this summer. Luckily, that was the COVID summer, so I get to take it online. So that was a big help for me. But yeah, I mean, like I just remember telling my family, I was like, dude, I want to drop out. Like I can't do this. This class just,
mm,
and it was the one class that was killing me, if I'm being honest. But it
mm.
was, I just wasn't paying attention. I'd be in class and I was editing pictures from the day before, or I wasn't locked into it. Um, and so I remember right after I had graduated, I'd kind of picked up some traction. My parents were kind of seeing a lot of different people post stuff about me, and they're like, oh, okay, well, maybe he can do something with this. And then we had a lot of family friends back in New York that were kind of telling my parents like, oh, like Sean's doing big, and they're like, what? Like we don't know. My parents aren't big social media people, so they
Yeah,
kind of
right.
just lurk on Facebook and see what they see. Um, so yeah, they had a lot of people my age and people over there that were telling them like I was doing good. So it slowly started to trickle in, like, okay, maybe he can do something. And then luckily, right out of college, I got a job with Slam. And for me, that was a starting point, right? Like I wasn't looking to
Yeah.
make 100K off the bat. It's just unrealistic for a college kid. But for someone who wasn't using their degree and just got a job like that in a time where COVID was just about to hit and people were losing jobs, that was big for me. And
Yeah.
then yeah, just a lot of it was a lot of disbelief and even questioning myself, like, can I make a living off of this? Can
Mm.
I be sustainable? Do I need to go back to school? Do I need to work like 5 jobs to maintain? It was a lot of that in my head, but I mean, at the end of the day, just as long as like if there's a three-word phrase that I love, bet on yourself. And that's something that I'll always hold with me. I always tell people whenever they ask me for advice, it's bet on yourself.
Yeah.
Simply just being because when you get to a point in life where you're like, hey, I don't know what I want to do, or hey, I want to do this, but everyone's saying no. It's a risk, but if you believe in if something that you love, bet on yourself and go all in, right? Because if you're 70-30 on something, it's the chance of you losing that is going to be high because you're not fully percent confident in it, and you know.
Yeah. So practically, what does that look like? So betting on yourself, like that's awesome, but what does that look like on a daily basis for you? How do you have the courage to even say that?
Yeah, a lot of it was tough, man. Camera gear is super expensive. I have to give a big shout out to probably one of my best friends. He helped me actually buy my first big lens. That was about over $2,000, and I wasn't making the money for that. And as
Mm.
a college kid, when you're trying to do college games, NBA games, you're like, you basically need a lens that can sustain you for those type of games. So I had reached out and I was like, hey, bro, like, talked about it, kind of explained it, and he was one of those people that had a lot of big belief in me and basically said like, all right, you can get me later once you're big, but it was just things like that, just kind of
That's really awesome.
knowing that I didn't have it, but someone else believed in me was great. And then also just the whole betting on yourself concept. It's tough because every day you wake up and you're like, all right, gigs aren't always coming in. People don't always want pictures. People don't always want so and so. So it's just getting up and always trying to be persistent with looking for jobs, looking for people who want graduation photos, wedding photos, basketball photo, whatever it is, right? It's I don't like to consider myself like a basketball photographer or just a photographer. Um, but it's just days like that where certain gigs aren't coming, or it's just a dry season for you. People don't want certain stuff, or NBA guys are in season, so it gets tough, right? But yeah, I think the whole concept of just betting on yourself, it's easy, but it's hard. It's easy to
Yeah,
say,
right.
but every day you wake up and it's a tough battle to be like, geez, like, do I really want to keep doing this? And there are days where my bank account is pretty low, and I'm like, sheesh, bro, like this is gonna be rough. And then somehow God pops up, and I spread out $30 from 2 weeks. It's just stuff like that. So, yeah.
Yeah, bro, there's so much gold in there. I think there's so much we could talk about, and I think it's huge. Where what's really interesting is like even you saying betting on yourself, and then working out the journey. And I think that's been really cool about your story is you didn't stop, and betting on yourself for you, it just seems like every day making that decision again and be like, man, like, nah, this is actually it. Like, this is where I think I'm supposed to be. I feel like I'm supposed to be, and continually making that step every day.
Hmm.
But yeah, I think a second thing that I love to just, I think that was really cool in your story is just that guy who gave you the lens. I think that's
Hmm.
just, like, thank God for people like that.
Yeah.
And, I think that's just encouragement to people watching. And actually, one thing you don't know about Sean, he said a little bit at the start, the fact that you just DM every and anyone.
Hmm.
And
That's
and I
that's
th-
uh that's one of my biggest things right now. It's a little weird at first to think
Mhm.
of, but my biggest thing, and I always tell, it's funny because I always trade off with that friend about this stuff. He'll ask me certain things, and I'm like, do this, and I'll ask him things about finance or money, and he's like, do this. So it's always funny. He's like, dude, you DM everybody, and somehow you get a response from one. It might be one person, but it's that one person you
100%.
need. And it's my biggest thing is a no doesn't hurt, right? Like you can ask someone something and they say no,
Come
and
on.
life keeps moving. So for me, it was like, why not ask? It doesn't hurt to ask.
That's
It's not
right.
like you're asking your girl who you're gonna see every day, like, hey, can I get your number? It's a lot of these people are, public figures or just people you won't ever see again, right? So if they say no, it's not gonna kill you.
That's right, man. And that's the thing, right? Where does that come from? That comes from the fear of what will people think. But let's be
Hmm.
real. There's 8 billion people in the world.
Yeah.
And I think this is the very important part. people are just not thinking about you that much. Maybe they see
Hmm.
like, man, like, who's this Sean guy? It's weird,
Yeah.
and then they're not thinking about you by the time the evening rolls around. Like,
Hmm.
and I just love that, and even actually asking yourself, like, what's the worst that could happen if I just ask?
Hmm.
The no is the worst thing that could happen, and you're back at where you started. Maybe you spend a couple minutes, but I think that's just everything. And I think as well, like with your friend as well, like building that community where you're constantly like giving to someone and then you're getting back and building those awesome relationships.
Hmm.
Yeah, tell me about that friend. Well, is he in the same space as you or
Um,
um,
so that friend, we basically, how do we meet? We met through two of my cousins. One of them went to school with him in high school. And we kind of all were, us four were, the best of buddies. Talked every day, hung out every weekend type deal. Um, yeah, he's big on the finance space. He has his MBA and stuff now. So, uh, I've always trusted him with when it comes down to money and making right decisions and kind of where my money is going with in terms of putting it in certain places, investing, stuff like that. So, I knew if there was anybody I ever needed a message for, if I ever needed money, it was going to be him. Uh, so yeah, I mean, we always had talks about what I wanted to do, stuff I wanted, and then one day I basically went to him and I was like, "Hey, dude, this is a stretch, it's a long shot, but I kind of need X amount," which ended up being like 2,000 something at the time. Um, Promise I'll pay you back, whatever the case is, and no questions asked. He willingly was just like, "Here, got it." And then it's funny because there was a scenario where that same exact lens broke when I went to go shoot the Lakers and LeBron James, and uh, for my birthday, he and my siblings and a couple of my family members all chipped in to pay for it again. Um, so yeah, it's just at that time I think the belief started kicking in for some people. I
mm,
think I would say mainly it was more like more cousins and stuff, not necessarily parents. Because even now to this day, like my parents are still like, "Oh, maybe you should still go back to school," or "Maybe you should still do this." But no, I think my siblings, my friends, my girlfriend, all of them right now, it's all support, and with him and my best guys, they've always been there. So I like that act right there kind of made me. It motivates you a lot too because you're playing with someone else's money in that sense. So
mm,
you don't want to like be like, "Hey, I need this," and then drop it right after that. You kind of have to prove like, okay, I'm using this for good, like I'm going somewhere with it, stuff like that, or else, you kind of let the ball drop, and that's you don't want that relationship to fall. So
yeah, totally. Man, it just sounds like, you've been blessed with really good relationships and I mean the impact that has. I know this about you. You're a faith person. So I'm curious to know how's your faith played into all of this and like yeah, like how's your faith played into kind of what you're doing right now?
yeah. So when I first started, man, my faith with God was great. I grew up in Christian church, went to church every week, like whenever you name it, I was probably at church with my family. Um, so the faith was always there in the sense of God and believing in myself. I always knew that I could do it. It was just a matter of
Mm,
other people. And I think for me, I wasn't really someone who had tons of friends growing up or conversed with many people. It was really just my close circle. So I always felt like my back was against the wall. It was me versus everybody else, or like my group versus everybody else type deal. Um, but my senior year of college, it was one of those things where I realized like, okay, if I'm gonna do this, I need to get serious about it. And there were days where I cried, and I was obviously I'd pray, and I'd be like, dude, days where I didn't have money, or days where I didn't get credentialed for an event that I wanted, or plenty of jobs that denied me.
yeah.
So just in those situations, like just believing and trusting in God, like, hey, this is gonna work out. And even now, it's still such a tough thing because I'll I'll get excited for stuff, or it's funny. I always talk with my girlfriend, and she's like, you need to stop doing X and X for free, or you need to stop giving so and so advice for free. Like you need to charge for that. Like that's your knowledge, that's your worth. You need to do this. And for me, it's like I believe in that good karma. Like if I do good now, I'll hopefully get good later, you know?
Yeah.
So just that whole thing, it's a lot of it is faith and just stepping out. It's funny you said in the beginning, I believe you said like, he kept showing up, and I have a friend that they have this whole thing. It's based on their mother. It's a long story, but she has a slogan called "Keep Showing Up," and I think that's a life statement every day. You choose to
Right.
keep showing up, but just day by day, not even just with it's with whatever you're going through,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's you're struggling to wake up every day, or you're struggling to love a loved one, you just keep showing up day by day and just hope it gets better, and you just go from there.
Yeah, that's awesome. Um, do so when you're taking these photos, I'm curious to know, is there, or even as you're like stepping out into your business world, and like how do you see God over there? Like how do you see the impact with like, or do you feel like there's like a kingdom sort of impact that's kind of in the midst of it, or how do you see your faith play into what you're doing?
Yeah. So a lot of what I do is somewhat competitive. The photography scene is kind of weird because there can be people that come out 10 days before and just bought a nice camera and they start clicking,
Yeah.
and they can take the same picture as you. So, um, for example, that the Kevin Durant photo that I did, there was people there that had other photos, and there were other outlets that were posting different stuff, and uh, Kevin Durant randomly doesn't post too much, comes out and posts mine. Same thing with like a Devin Booker. Plenty of other photos out there. The team photographers are there. Plenty
Mm-hmm.
of things that they can post, and just stuff like that where it's like you're shocked by it. So for me,
Mm-hmm.
my biggest thing is I want to be an inspiration. I want to be a people person to others. I don't want to just be a photographer, right? Like that's why I said in the beginning, those personal relationships for me are huge. So
Mm-hmm.
every day when I walk into my job at Sports Academy or whatever, um, obviously there's certain guys that you can share certain moments with, and I've gotten lucky enough to know a lot of people just there and outside of it at workouts, just that we've shared a lot about ideas. We've bounced off of each other. These guys are professional athletes. It doesn't mean they don't have emotions.
Mm-hmm.
So really just talking with them and managing certain things, or even just helping them grow through things, I feel like that's big. And then inspiring the younger generation too. Um, I have a cousin who's now doing video, and a couple other cousins who are doing other stuff. So it's like it's cool to see that kind of just breaking barriers, and
Mm-hmm.
just using that and helping them step out into their what they want to do in life. So yeah, I mean, I think that kingdom based perspective is huge. I think that's something that I ultimately want to try to master more.
Yeah.
But again, that just comes with conversation. It's hard doing it through just photography. You kind of have to have conversations for that. But that's why I love it, right? Like these guys want their life captured. They want this captured.
Mm-hmm.
So the whole time you don't just sit there mute. You sit there and try to break a bubble, or you try to have a hard conversation with people. So yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. I also love just hearing, like the ripple effect of you stepping out, right? The fact that, you step out and, again, like we said at the start, like going against disbelief, it's just such a catalyst for others, hey?
Mhm.
That it just helps others also say, you know what, if Sean can do it, so can I. If he kind of just steps outside of the norm and steps outside what's expected and kind of goes with his gut and bets on himself and does what he feels like he's called to do, yeah, maybe I could do that. And I think that's just such a cool part of it all, hey?
Mhm.
Yeah, that's cool. Bro, I got a last question for you. So we're in 2022. What's the dream? What's the vision for you? Like,
Um,
what's in your heart?
it's funny you ask. We actually just had a Vision Sunday at church this past week, and it was a really good message. If you don't have, there's a lot that was said, but there's a couple lines that stuck with me, and one of them being was, if you don't have an end goal, there's nothing to chase. And so it kind of gives you step back and you think to yourself like, okay, what am I chasing? What do I want? What's my end goal? So for me, I have a lot of crazy goals, and I like that they're crazy because it gives me a high bar to chase. Um, Personally, right now, I'm in the process of a couple different interviews with jobs. Uh, all that I love all have to do with content creation, social media management type deal. Um, Dream job, obviously, if I could, I'd be a personal content person slash manager for an NBA guy, NFL guy, just because I like having that person to person talk instead of just one of those things where it's like, hey, we're gonna hire you for an NBA event, let's just say All Star Weekend, and you go, you take pictures, and you never talk to these people again. It's hard in those senses. But if you work for an agency or if you work for a player, you kind of have that person to person experience. You get to have conversations. You get to be you. It's hard when you're in a 2 hour window shooting something and you don't get to say much, or you're just laughing at jokes that they say and you're not really engaged in it because you're afraid to talk to these big guys.
Yeah, right.
But yeah, I mean, a lot of the goals that I have are wild right now. I want to be a millionaire, obviously, as everybody else does. Just
Mm.
things like that. I have some specific goals, obviously, just kind of where I want to work, what I want to make, um, stuff like that. But I mean, yeah, overall, just I mean, 2022, try to be a better person, try to inspire more people,
Yeah.
um, show God's love, stuff like that. The little things, but those little things make a big difference in the world. So
Yeah, 100%. And I think it's like, I think it's such a good hesitation that you can have when it comes to vision, because it's one of those things, especially as people of faith and people who love Jesus. It's one of those things where it's like, Lord, if you don't show up, like, it's not going to happen. Like, there should actually, I'm so certain of this. Like, if your dreams don't scare you, they're actually not big enough.
yep.
Because and if you're quite comfortable saying them out loud, that kind of gives us a good sense that, this is something you actually could achieve on your own without the help of God.
Mm.
But I think when you come with a level of hesitation and I'm sure I bet there's stuff that you're not going to tell anybody for the next decade,
Yep.
because you're just like, Lord, this is between you and I, and we're going to
Yeah.
figure it out. And because you need God to show up. And I think that's such a great place. And it's such a place of faith where it's truly believing, what, I'm actually not here on earth by accident. God has me here for a purpose, for this time, as Esther would say, as such a time as this, that God, they're going to use me in such a purposeful way. So I'm going to actually have faith that maybe my life could be as crazy amazing as what I read in the Bible. And that actually takes faith. You know what I mean? Like, I've actually just even noticed, and to be honest with myself, and these past 2 years, where it's just like so much has come our way, hey, and it's like sometimes it's actually hard to dream. It's hard to dream because life has been brutal,
Mhm.
and it actually takes faith to dream again.
Yep.
And so I think that's just encouragement for anyone watching, regardless, I think, of what this past couple years has been, even if it's been your best couple years or been your worst couple years, daring to dream again, because he's the God of the impossible. Like, he split the Red Seas. He can do so much more
Yep.
through our lives, and he wants to. That's the really cool part. And so, yeah, bro, thank you so much for sharing your story. I really
Of
hope
course, man.
it inspired people. And I think what's really cool about your story is that I know in the days and the decades to come, God's going to keep using you in such a great way, and you're going to make such a phenomenal impact. And I know that you'll have success in the worldly sense, which is awesome, because I think it allows you to have a voice and allows you to have a place. Um, but more than that, it's cool seeing your journey right now and seeing someone who's in the middle of it, on the way, who's done that initial hump of staying consistent. And there's a lot of people who are just a couple steps before you. And I
Mhm.
think it'll be really inspirational for them to just hear that, normal guy, picked up a camera, kept on DMing people, got around the right people, told his dream and vision to people, kept showing up, believing in himself, and just kept on going. And you know what? Sean, I'm so certain as you keep on doing those things, it's going to be exciting a couple decades ahead of you.
Appreciate it, Doug.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that podcast with Sean Daniels, aka 1ShotSean, if you want to find him on Instagram. But before you head out, I would love to let you know about my free masterclass, which I'll link below. If you're at this spot where you're feeling really confused about what God has called you to do, I'm really passionate about helping you, and I want to offer this free masterclass to you, which will help you get good guidelines around how to better understand the call of God on your life, and how to get moving, and how to make some steps, and how you, just like Sean, can step out into your God call. So if you want to watch a free masterclass about how you can learn about a simple 3-step system that I created called Heart, Hands, and Head, click in the link below. And if you enjoyed this podcast, feel free to share it with your friends and family.